Carl and Brendan here from Games, Brains and Head-Banging Life, gbhblofficial.com for short. And it's battle reaction time, Brendan's choice, as we return to, what are they? What's this, Swedish death metal? Swedish melodic death metal. Are they Swedish?
Yeah, Swedish, yeah.
Okay, it's Scar Symmetry. A band I'm semi-familiar with, but my familiarity only comes from Brendan. I do not ever listen to this band outside when Brendan reminds me they exist. I literally will come off this later as well and forget they exist. It's no fault of the band because whenever I hear them, I enjoy what they do for the most part. It's just that there's always other music I got to hear, so I'm not going to be going back to this band who I'm still, you will correct me if I'm wrong on this, right? They've not done anything in a while. Is that still the case?
That would still be the case in a way. I mean, musically, yeah, you're right. From releases. They did play, they've done some live shows recently, didn't they play at Tech Fest or somewhere like that?
Or were they at Tech Fest? Okay.
Someone, I think it was them. I'm pretty sure they played.
Okay, let's have a little look at that while you explain the track.
Okay, so the song is called Neohuman. And it is the title track of their last actual, well, it's not really, okay, it's kind of the title track of their last release, which was the Singularity Phase 1 Neo-Humanity. So it's kind of the title track like that. So the Singularity, which was either a short album, a mini album, or an EP, whatever you want to call it, 5-6 tracks, which has the absolute fucking stunning Limits to Infinity track on it. And this as well is my other favorite song on that. That came out in 2014, so significant time ago. With the Singularity Phase 2 Xenotaph, and there's meant to be 3 phases to this, so fuck knows how old I'm going to be by the time we get to Phase 3 at this fucking rate. It was penciled in for 2017 and 18 and 19. It's now showing to be announced, and then 2022 in brackets, but who knows?
Wait. I'm baffled here. Hold up a second here. Hold up, right? So Phase 2 Xenotaph is not actually out yet.
No.
That's I'm reading this block of text that's about Phase 2 Xenotaph, and the problem is my mind gets confused because it starts with in January 2015. So you kind of feel like it's going to lead there. And then I've just realized, because I don't want to be reading too much while you're talking because that's rude. But you're right. Out as of 2018, the band announced full title of the upcoming 7th album is Singularity Phase 2 Xenotaph. And then there's just an update in 2019 about the bassist resigning from the band.
Yeah,
well,
people got bored updating after that.
Yeah, because you're right. Just to as well, Scar Symmetry headlined the Friday of Tech Fest this year. That was the 1st of July. What? I'm well confused. Can about like
from what I understand, without any like basis or any back into it, but just from things that have been posted and little snippets you see here and there. Whatever happened after this first EP got released, the band kind of went into kind of a break for a period of time to write this album, and then went into, I don't know if it was lawsuits, but disorder essentially, with changes to the lineup, delays, everything like that. I feel like in the last year or so, whatever's happened is they've become settled again, and that's why maybe the shows and stuff like that were to show that, you know, we're kind of back and stuff, leading up to hopefully finally getting this 8-year wait for an album, which is made worse, isn't it? Because it's a second part. An 8-year gap for an album isn't, sadly, unfortunately, isn't completely unknown for bands.
Yep.
You know, but when you know, if you like something, it's part 1 and it's a trilogy, and then 8 years later, part 2 is not here, and you're like, there's only part 2.
Yeah. What the hell's going to happen when you finish it? Looking at their Facebook page, they're pretty active now on this. You know, there's a time of recording. There's a post yesterday about a show in Linköping, wherever that is.
I feel like whatever's happened is settled, and they're
alive.
And
probably
a sensible move, isn't it? Probably a sensible move, you know, like just to be silent for 8 years and then drop an album. Probably makes a bit more sense to go, right, let's get some shows under our belts, remind everyone we're still around, and then drop the album.
Yeah. Well, you might, fingers crossed that you're a little bit closer to what comes next. Okay, Neohuman. It's a long one, but I'll imagine it's got a lot of stuff going on it. So let's do this in 3, 2, 1, go. Like a video game.
Well, it's all sci-fi themed, this album.
It's like the start of like a chiptune era video game, Castlevania.
Watch
Boom. Instant cut. That
it's because the album is obviously a concept, obviously. So it flows literally instantly, song into song into song. So those little kind of last couple of seconds there are almost like a joining piece rather than necessarily part of either song.
Oh yeah, nothing wrong with that. Makes complete sense. I had to check right there at the end because I was like, this is either the first track on the album or the last track on the album. There's no way to sit in the middle or as the penultimate unless there's an outro. And I was pretty much right. It's technically the second track, but the first one is 52 seconds called The Shape of Things to Come. So I imagine that's just an introduction more than anything else.
Yeah, exactly.
It's fucking nonsense, man. It's nonsense because like it's very, very kitchen sinky in the sense that everything's really thrown at it, but not in like a negative way. When I say nonsense, sometimes obviously it's a connotation is a negative word. That's nonsense means that's rubbish. Doesn't always mean that. It just means it's nonsensical to my ears, but it doesn't mean I don't enjoy it. Yeah, I've listened to people talk nonsense. We fucking talk nonsense. Doesn't mean I don't enjoy listening to the speeches and the talking and stuff like that. But there is a lot going on to such a degree that at times, I think some things are overshadowed and end up getting buried, particularly when you've got over 8 minutes of what this is. The first thing I want to come to is, right, like I know genre bending is important. It's pretty much, even though a band is categorized in a specific way, it doesn't mean that that's exclusively what they sit in. If I didn't know anything about this band and you played me this track and said, what genre do you put them in? I am not going to call them a melodic death metal band. I'm going to call them a progressive or technical death metal band. Because that shit is progressive as fuck. Just because it's got melody in it, that doesn't mean it's automatically categorized as melodic death metal. I'd think progressive more than anything else. I think that word needs to be used.
That they just headline Tech Fest.
Yeah, I mean, that word needs to be used when it comes to describing this particular track. I can't speak for all the others.
I think that's sometimes the distinction, though, isn't it? Because, like, even you said it there, Scar Symmetry can be a melodic death metal band, but not every album might be a melodic death metal album.
You're looking at some of the track lengths from the other albums, other parts of the album. I can probably picture a more traditional song here and there, even with kind of like technical fast. All right, fair enough. Right, things I did like. I liked a lot of it. I did really like it, actually. I really did. I kind of moaned at halfway through being like, holy shit, it's only half done. But it wasn't through boredom or anything. It's more, okay, what are they going to throw at me again? Because that's the expectation. Yeah. More than anything else, and whether or not I'm going to keep up to it. So that introduction, that sort of intro, the sort of over the top, very keyboard heavy, synthy mix of effects, jokingly referred to as a video game, kind of chiptune-y, but it did feel that way to me, like I was playing some old SNES game, I'll bet with a much better production, a much more elaborate soundscape. It doesn't quite sound like fucking that sort of thing, but you get my point. The vocals are really good. Really, really good. It's interesting that I expected a more balance to have clean and the guttural, but predominantly it's a cleanly sung song for the most part. But they are really good. I like his voice. It's very smooth, very soothing, which is interesting to have such soothing vocals when you've got such speed on the instrumentals throughout, constantly being thrown at you. And you've got this guy kind of not warbling, not crooning, but easy listening. His vocals are easy listening. There's nothing, and then obviously you get the punctuation every so often of the kind of grr vocals, and that just adds a nice little layer. There is a lot of melody. Particularly that melodic drop where the tempo shifts just slightly and we kind of slow it down just a tad momentarily was the kind of, again, feels like clever placement, because it's like, okay, here's an opportunity to take a breath before we come back for the last 2 odd minutes it was, and we're going to go hell for fucking leather. But surprisingly, considering all the progressive elements and all that fast-paced instrumentation, particularly from the guitars and the use of the keyboards as well, quite heavy in it. The rhythm, it's quite catchy. It's actually surprisingly a catchy song, partially because it's energetic, it keeps quite upbeat and quite frantic. I have no idea what this song would sound like live. I feel like, good God, would it be a struggle to get into it live because it's got so much fucking going on? But then as well, you've got soloing, kind of out of nowhere. I didn't really expect that, and I guess that's a bit more traditional in this sort of death metal sphere, because considering how you don't get a lot of soloing, to be honest, in progressive kind of metal. So I guess that keeps it on the more traditional side. But all of that, I got no complaints. I wouldn't say I'm like blown away, like, wow, that is amazing. But I'm like, no, that's really interesting. That's really good. That's also, what year was this album? 2014.
14.
14, yeah. It sounds surprisingly fresh. Like, if you told me that came out this year, I wouldn't argue. I wouldn't go, no, that sounds dated. It doesn't. It sounds incredibly fresh.
They got. I mean, I don't know outside of this album a whole load about Scar Symmetry. I know a bit, but outside of this album and this trilogy, and what I always found extremely fascinating when I listened to this, and it is a concept album. It's a concept trilogy. That's the thing, and that's why the other things getting released is important, because it's not just part one of an album cycle, it's part one of a story has been told. They're essentially the George R.R. Martin of music. You know, they just didn't bother finishing the trilogy yet. Well, they will. I'm pretty sure they will.
So
I think when you read up into it, exactly. I found when I looked up into what they were writing about, what they were doing, and obviously it's a sci-fi story, right? Probably from a story aspect and the way they tell the story and the storytelling, how each song leads into one, and you're actually on a journey. It's got quite a lot. I guess the only album I've ever really had that with before was probably Obsolete by Fear Factory, in terms of that full kind of end-to-end story, you know. And it's to do with the rise of artificial intelligence and artificial intellects in particular, with mental capacities above human level thought. Importantly, this is all by the year 2030, so they do need to hurry the fuck up with these other two albums. Otherwise, they're going to be writing about the past in the present, which will get really fucking mind tripping, won't it? You know, and it goes down this route, right, of you know, about people, the divide between humans as people who embrace new technology and those who oppose it due to social issues, and then the emergence of beings called transhumanists, right? Now, when you look into this stuff as a story of its own, it's like, okay, this is a cool sci-fi story. When you look into it more, the shit is all based like in real life, and there are genuine neo-humanity transhumanist groups that exist now with seriously rich fucking names who claim to be members of it, who help fund, and it's all around the idea of implanting a chip to improve human capability. And actually it's got this kind of nice grounding in it, and I think when I read that stuff and then I listened to the album, and I felt like they did a really good capture of that sci-fi soundscape and all of that. Like it didn't, I don't always go for a lot of the sort of effects and all that sort of stuff, but I felt like it was rightly placed and used really, really well. So I as a concept, I fucking love it. And musically, I think it writes the story. Like, do you know what I mean? It's like it marries perfectly.
Without knowing any of the detail that you do in regards to story or concepts of what they were kind of basing on, I understand what you're saying. I would totally agree that I get this immense science fiction feel to it. It's musically kind of feels that way. You used a Fear Factory comparison. I think that's a totally fair one. It's less about industrial, more on the sort of electronic side more than anything else. I think it does come through quite strongly. But yeah, it's a win for you, because I do really, really like it. It'd be interesting if one day, like I said, we were able to come and talk about Scar Symmetry in a more modern sense, rather than this constant like, oh yeah, this band from this time, you know?
Yeah.
What do you reckon? What do you think of the song? You know what to do? Let us know in the comments.
Thank you very much for watching. If you liked what you saw, please help us out by giving us a thumbs up and hitting that subscribe button. If you really liked what you saw, consider donating to keep the website and channel running by buying us a coffee via our coffee page or picking up some merch from our Big Cartel store. You can check us out on gbhbl.com, as well as via our social media, Facebook, Instagram and Twitter, as well as listen to our interviews via SoundCloud, Apple Music and Spotify. Just search for GBHBL. Games, horror and heavy metal. What else is life for?